Hey, what up, kid folks? It's Mike D. What is good? It's Blasey Blah, where we connect, build, and break bread with our kin folks.
Yes.
So, who do we have here?
My name is Ellen.
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 No AKAs?
No AKAs. I am not famous whatsoever.
Not yet. Not yet.
I don't know if I ever want to be famous. I would just love to live my regular life.
Oh, you just want to live happily.
Yes,
Okay. But all my guests, I have a question. Mm-hmm. What is your migration story?
My migration story. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, she was actually born in Hawaii. But
What year? What year?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you know?
Oh my
just
gosh,
roughly.
I don't know. I'm gonna say like maybe 1930 something.
Okay, go on.
Maybe around there. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on it.
But she was born in Hawaii.
She was born in Hawaii.
Okay,
Her siblings were born in Hawaii.
So actually, if she is born in Hawaii in the 1930s, that means she came from the farm workers that was recruited by the U.S. to Hawaii.
I think so. I think that's what happened with her parents.
Okay. Good to know.
But when my grandma was younger, her and her family moved back to the Philippines. But they didn't have access to their birth certificates.
Like they lost it.
I don't know if it was lost or they just weren't able to obtain them. But what had happened was that a distant family member found out about my grandma's in the Philippines, and so what she did was that she went to Hawaii. She was able to obtain it for them, sent it to the Philippines, so as proof of her birth. That
as
she was
an
born
American
as
in
an
Hawaii.
American citizen. Yes,
okay,
exactly.
She's like Obama.
Yeah.
Let me see your birth certificate.
Yeah.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that time, my grandparents were already married and they already had kids. So that's how my mom was able to come here to America. And then...
How old were your mom when she came here?
She was like in her late 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty young.
Really young.
Okay.
So she came with, I think, just a couple of siblings at the time. And she, found her way, tried to make her marks here, start that American dream.
Right.
And then in the 1980s, she had a coworker, and she was like, my mom's name is Dory. So, Doris, you should be pen pals with my cousin.
Okay. That's how it all starts. I mean, pen pals, you know what I mean?
So you write letters.
Yeah, we didn't have social media then.
Write letters.
No technology.
No. So my mom's like, okay. So she began, or actually, I guess the message of my aunt. So my aunt was the one who told my mom to be pen pals with my dad.
Okay.
So my dad was the one. I think he wrote one to her first to introduce himself to her.
Wait, have you seen that letter?
Okay, so the cutest thing ever, my mom and my dad back and forth wrote letters to each other for a long time. To this day, they still have every single letter, every single card that they have sent to each other. So I remember my brother and I growing up, we're just like, what is this? It was like in this binder, and it was like in like plastic sleeves to preserve it.
Right.
And so we're just like, what is this? What is this? And it wasn't until maybe I was around 12 or 13 years old when I finally asked my mom, so why did dad write you letters? And so how did you and dad come to be? Because my parents are from two completely different areas in the Philippines.
Which are?
So my mom is from Pardo, which is in Cebu.
Okay.
My dad is from Tarlac, which is in Manila.
Okay.
So two completely different areas, So basically, as time went on, my mom had planned to come back to the Philippines, and she was going to have a stopover in Manila. And my dad really wanted to meet her.
Okay. These were like in their 20s, mid 20s, 30s?
Late 20s.
Okay.
My dad, I think he was early 30s or about to be in his 30s, maybe. And so when my mom first met him, she was, really unsure because my mom was actually a very shy and timid lady, And so when she saw my dad, she was really shy. She didn't know whether or not to pursue some kind of relationship with him.
Okay.
But with encouragement of my aunt and my uncles. They're like, just give him a chance, just see what happens.
The pressure. Come on.
But just, and then, like basically a few days later, they got married.
Oh.
Yeah, and my parents actually got married on Christmas Eve.
Really?
Yeah, they did.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah, like not many people know. So it wasn't until I really got invested in my parents' relationship with their backstory that I was like, oh, so Christmas Eve is like a special in two ways. It's like, to be together with family. It's a holiday. And also it's a celebration of my parents' wedding anniversary.
That is dope.
Yeah.
Well, so first and foremost, we're cousins.
Yes.
So all those times that we had spent Christmas Eve, there was a secret celebration happening.
I mean, just like, it was just always like, oh, like, after I found out, and like, eventually when my brother found out too, it was like, oh, happy anniversary, mom and dad. But then my parents are the type of people who don't like to make a big ordeal about themselves. So it's like, oh, it's a private thing between them.
It's just chill. They're just chill with it. Okay.
My dad is such a romantic. Not many people know.
Okay.
So like every year, like birthdays, Valentine's Days, Christmas, whatever, special holiday, my dad will still buy flowers for my mom and write her a card. So continuing that tradition that they had when they first started. Some kind of love note of some sort to give to her.
That I did not know. That is so sweet.
It is so sweet. And it was so funny because my mom, she's like, you don't have to keep buying me flowers. They're so expensive. It's okay. And so what my dad did instead, he would go into her garden and just cut flowers from her garden.
I didn't buy it.
And then, yeah, exactly. So that was the loophole. So to keep that romance alive.
Right.
But, just not spending money on it.
Okay. So for the young folks out there, take notes.
Yes. That very old school love.
Yeah.
And it very much can still be alive.
For sure.
It's the little things that matter.
We have to legal or court daily on a daily. It's not. Sometimes we forget, like when the pursuit, and then we are able to come together. That we forget that we could have to continue to have that pursuit and show it. And yeah.
So men, ladies,
take
pay
notes. So in that case, is that an expectation that you set for men?
Oh, absolutely. See, here's the thing. I grew up in a very loving family. And my dad has always set a great standard of how a man should treat me.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
And which I'm very grateful for.
For sure. As you
So,
should.
Yes. Women, do not settle. Never settle. So with that, so I firmly believe, so kind of going into the subject of love languages. My love language, I have two, which is quality time.
That's your top two.
Yes, so quality time, and also it's kind of borderline between physical touch and words of affirmation. So your love language could definitely change throughout the years.
For sure.
But number one is quality time. And what I mean by quality time is like, hey, I want you and I to just be together, unplugged, and just be in the moment together.
Okay.
Because that's what really matters to me.
That's what's important to you.
That's what's important to me, and I reciprocate my partner's love language back.
So is that how you receive or how you give? There's that.
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, how I receive love is quality time.
Quality time.
How I communicate love to my boyfriend is acts of service. So I kind of think that I get that from my mom because, or even just, the women of the older generation, they just always have that maternal need to I need to do this and this and that. And so I think she kind of bestowed that quality upon me because growing up, it was like, oh, Anak, we have to clean the house. Anak, we have to do X, Y, Z,
Right.
And so having that habit, just as I got older, it, kind of eventually is how I communicate love to my partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So acts of service.
Yes, active service.
Okay.
Yes.
So folks out there, comment what are your love languages?
Yes,
and if you don't know what about it, just look it up, love languages. There's 5 love languages.
And you can actually take a test online to see what is your love language. So it's a survey, it probably takes maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, my love language, what is it? Quality time and physical touch. And then affirmation.
Yes.
acts of service, and then last,
It's
the least
gifts.
is gift. I'm not good at receiving gifts.
I'm not either. So the thing about me, so anyone who knows me, right? I am a giver in general. Like, like I love to give in whatever I can. Like, hey, let's go to dinner. Don't worry about it. I got it. Like, or like.
That's more like an act of service.
I guess maybe, but like in general, like I'm just overall I don't like to receive gifts.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like I like when someone gives me something, like, oh, thank you.
Right.
This is really nice of you. But like, I don't know. Like I don't really need it. That's why even like in the times where like, oh, it's expected that I receive a present, right? Christmas, birthday, whatever. The more extravagant it is, it's like, oh my God.
It's too much.
Oh my God, thank you. But you really didn't have to.
It's appreciated.
Yeah, it's absolutely
It's appreciated.
But it's like, oh my God, like, so with that, like if there have been times where, a significant other has given me a very lavish gift. It's appreciated. But it's like, the money that you spent on this one thing, we could have used that money to create more memories together.
You're just like your mom.
I know. So like I believe in like, hey, I want to make memories with you. Let's go on a trip. Let's do something that you and I have not yet been able to do together.
Spend it on creating memories.
And creating that quality
not
time.
Not an object.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, because what's it going to do? Just sit on my shelf in a few years and just like collect dust?
Well, if you have any gifts that are just sitting there, let me know.
Do you want a GoPro? I'm just kidding. Never. I will never.
Did you say go? I'll take it.
No, that GoPro is meant to collect the memories.
For sure.
I'm kidding.
Dope.
Babe, if you're listening, I swear. No.
In terms of the pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
How was the impact? How it has impacted you in terms of, especially the first 3 weeks, the first shelter in place and throughout. So how has that impacted you?
So the first 3 weeks, I'm not 100% sure if I remember, but just generally, I am an essential worker.
Okay.
So I was very fortunate that I could still work.
Okay.
The only thing that really affected me with my work is that, so I work with clients, I work with children with autism. So it's either if my client's family chooses not to receive services at the time in the time of COVID, which absolutely is understanding.
For sure.
It's understandable. So that just kind of like, it lessened my hours in terms of work.
But you still had work.
I was still able to work, but I wasn't getting as many hours as I was before. So with that, as COVID continued, like, yes, I did struggle somewhat financially. And then come, I believe it was July 2020. So backstory, I have these two girls who like incredible people, and they have a love for plants. So as long as I've known them, they're like, oh yeah, I bought this plant. And for me, I'm like, all right.
Cool.
Okay. And like, yes, one of them in particular, her room is like a jungle. Literally, plants everywhere. Walls, on top of her furniture. And it looked really cool.
Okay.
But like at that time, I was like, okay, yeah, cool, plants, whatever. But it wasn't until maybe July where, or actually, no, I take that back. It was like maybe sometime in April when they both gave me my first cutting. A cutting is like, a cutting of a plant.
Where you can grow.
So you propagate it. So you just put it in water. And then, so they gave it to me. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And, this is a gift from someone.
Yeah.
So, like, and it's a
the
living,
reaction,
it's
cool.
It's a living thing. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I am not going to just, like, throw it away or just, like, not really take care of it. So I was like, okay, so I'll propagate it. So I threw it in some water, had it in front of my window, and had it start rooting and everything. And then slowly, I feel like they did this on purpose. They were like, oh, Ellen, do you want to come with us to a nursery? Do you want to come plant shopping with us? We want to go look at plants. And I was like, okay, sure, Right. So as time went on, I started buying personal plants for myself. So I said, okay, so cool. Like, yeah, I bought myself my first plant. And then eventually I was like, this plant seems very lonely.
That's how it is. That's how it starts.
So my plant needs a friend. So I said, okay, so I'm going to go buy another plant.
Yeah.
And I bought some more.
Wait, what was the first plant that you propagated?
The first plant that I propagated.
It didn't survive.
Yes.
Okay.
I still have it. It's called the Philodendron Brazil.
Okay.
Yes.
And has that had an impact because you actually nurtured it?
Yes.
I think it's that the impact of like actually.
I made sure to take care of it. And then, so I got 4 cuttings total from those girls.
Okay.
And so yes, as time went on, I started buying my own personal plants. And slowly but surely, my own personal plant collection started growing. And then with the pandemic, we began to see, like a lot, especially during summer, a lot of plant businesses, like small businesses ran by women, started popping up. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool, And then those girls, they love plants. Like there's such huge plant enthusiasts, especially when it comes to like rare plants that can go like well into like hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So with the pandemic, we just slowly came up with the idea that like, hey, what if we just start, our own plant business?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why not try? And lo and behold, like, I think we decided to do it like at the right moment because everyone during that time in the pandemic wanted to buy plants because everyone's just at home. People are just, trying to, redecorate or add things to their house to add something. Because, people who work at home, you're just always at home. You want to bring something like to liven up the place, like literally, So people at the time when we opened up or we started our business, people were in the market for buying plants. So with that, oh my gosh, so there was some research to kind of go into it. And so we just tried to make sure, like, okay, as long as we're doing it the correct way, cool. And then boom, we created our Instagram. Super small following at first. And then it became more word of mouth. And then we started getting more followers. And then we were only open on weekends because we do have our regular 9 to 5 on Fridays, Monday to Friday. And then all of a sudden, like, it would be like, oh, okay, constant people. So we were also very adamant about following the terms, like following the rules of COVID and making sure that everyone stays safe. So we always encourage, like, hey, come, if you come to our shop, wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart from any other customers, And as like the weekends kept coming in, we're like, oh my God, like there's so many people.
People are coming in.
Like, we're like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden there was one weekend where we were just so like, I guess flabbergasted is the word, that we had a consistent, like, this is during the summer, mind you. So this is already July into August. And it's hot in San Jose. And we had a nonstop line from the time that we opened, like for almost 3 hours of constant customers waiting because we only allowed like 1 to 2 parties per area in the shop. So it's like, and we started off in a very small portion of our front porch. And then it expanded to our front yard, like porch and front yard. And then now we have it in our backyard just because we have so much inventory that we're like, okay, let's just make it easier on ourselves that we could just set up a shop outside in our backyard. And, all the plants are just there. So it was a booming business to have. And it was so successful. And we're so thankful for it, for sure. So having that as just an extra means of income definitely helped the 3 of us with COVID.
Extracurricular activity also that you enjoy.
Yes.
So I think when you're doing something you enjoy, it becomes less of a work.
Absolutely. So with that, our business is called Planty to Share.
Say it again.
Planty to Share. You can follow us on Instagram at planty_to_share.
Planty to Share. I'll put the link. So if y'all want to check that out, if y'all interested in plants, for sure, come check that out. In terms of your plant collection, what is
my personal plant collection?
Yeah. Oh. What is your most favorite plant in that collection?
Okay, so this is kind of like the very basic plant that everyone wants. It's called a monstera. Monstera. It's a very tropical plant, split leaves. So it's technically a philodendron split leaf. That's a scientific name. So it's just because it gets so huge and it's just so gorgeous to look at. So that's my absolute favorite.
Okay.
Lately, in the past like a couple months, I guess, I've been kind of loving more vining plants. Vining as in like it's in a pot and it just kind of trickles down. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so, I don't know what's that called. You know what that is called?
Yes, that's a golden pothos.
Okay.
Binding plants have been like my thing right now. So anything binding, so pothos, philodendrons. I love strings, so strings of anything. So string of hearts, string of turtles. Love string of turtles. And there's even like rare plants within those. So variegated plants can be very expensive.
Is there a plant that you don't have right now that you want?
Oh yes.
Which one is that?
Plant community. If you know the Thai Constellation.
Okay.
So a Thai Constellation is basically a monstera with variegation on it. Variegation means like within like the DNA, it was mutated to where it has like white instead of green. And it's rare.
Okay.
And they can go up to thousands.
Really?
So I have been very lucky that I have been able to visit some nurseries where they do have and sell Thai Constellations. And it's gorgeous, gorgeous. But I will not spend like $3,000.
It's not much.
It's not much.
What's it called?
A Thai Constellation.
A Thai Constellation. Okay.
Yes.
If anybody have some Thai Constellation, let me know.
If you want to be very giving.
If it's affordable and
oh my God, like you could. So with the $3,000 one, it was in a huge pot, so it was very full grown, very full. So it's gorgeous to look at. And then there's people who are also giving starters. So a starter is essentially like it was probably cut from that mother plant.
Okay.
And then they propagated it. It was rooted out, and then they put it in a smaller plant. So there's a starter, but a starter plant can even cost at maybe at the most or like at the beginning like $200 to $300.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can start small, but it's like
I'm gonna have to start finding a Thai Constellation and start reselling those.
You will make money because like the plant community knows.
I don't have a green thumb.
I thought I didn't either. But once you become very aware of your plants, it's like, oh, do you need to be watered? Do you need more sun? I should move you so you can get more sun.
Do you talk to your plants?
Absolutely. I wake up in the morning. Good morning, guys.
Okay.
Good morning, friends.
Do they have names?
I do have some names for some of my plants.
Some names.
Yeah. So
your favorite ones.
So my monstera.
No favoritism.
My monstera, I named him Monty the monstera.
Okay.
I had a Maranta red.
So it's Miranda.
So no, her name is Miranda. So Miranda, it was inspired by Lizzie McGuire. And then what else? So my golden pothos, which is a little bit more than the one that you have here. So it's golden pothos, but then growing up, I loved the book The Outsiders.
Okay.
And in that book, there was a character called Pony Boy. And there was a line that said, they said, "Stay golden, Pony Boy." So I named my pothos Pony Boy.
Pony Boy.
Yeah.
Actually, I got some plants from her.
Yes.
From Planted to Share. Again, check that out.
I do see them here. They're still alive, which is great.
Some of them. Not all of them. But so in terms of your career path, how are you doing with that? In terms of what's your goal?
So right now I'm in grad school. And I'm in
grad school. Okay,
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm currently in grad school to pursue my master's in ABA, so Applied Behavior Analysis. That's the career that I'm in right now.
Okay.
So I work with children with autism. I mentioned that earlier. So the ultimate goal is to become a board-certified behavior analyst and to help with program development for children with autism and really focusing on their needs in terms of services.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I did not choose that to be my original career.
So how did that come?
So backstory. So I pursued when I was in community college, I was pursuing my associate's degree in psychology. And then when I went to my undergrad, I pursued that as well. I continued to pursue that. But as my time got closer towards like graduation and when I went through my classes, like I had to kind of choose a demographic of people who I kind of wanted to potentially, focus my psychology degree on.
Okay.
And with that, I chose victims of sexual assault. So I originally wanted to pursue my MFT and go back to school to get my master's in clinical psychology. And with that in general, the programs are very competitive. And so the chances of me getting in would have been very hard. Because there's so many amazing students who also want to pursue an MFT or get into a clinical psychology program. So at the time, I just kind of felt like, man, what would set me apart from other people who were applying? So after I graduated my undergrad, I started working at the ABA company that I am now, just so that way I'm like, okay, it's within psychology, not exactly the field that I wanted to go through, but it's within the field. I just kind of want to get my feet wet into, the general field. So as time went on, so this was like 2018 was when I started with that company. And as time went on, I found myself like, wow, like, I really love this field. I love working with the kids that I work with. And also just generally making a difference in children's lives.
Sure.
And it I cannot tell you how many times where I had to stop myself from crying because of when one of my clients makes a huge strive and huge progress in something in a program that we're working on. It's a huge deal. So of course, I will positively reinforce that behavior, and it's just amazing to know that, hey, because of you or anyone who's in that field, you are making a difference in this child's life. You are the reason why, they're making huge milestones. So with that, I decided to go further into the field because that's where the money is. I'm not gonna lie,
Sometimes that's where you have to go.
So yeah.
And at the same time, you're enjoying it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Number one, love what you do.
For sure.
Yes.
So I think there's this thing, there's a huge thing in regards to being able to have an impact on someone's lives. And it's so gratifying.
Yes.
To all the people that are working with other people, whether it's teachers or whatever have you, that you're engaging with another individual, another human being, and you're able to actually engage in a way that you are uplifting or making a difference in their life. It is so gratifying.
That, and it's just so rewarding.
Yeah.
I honestly, if you ever work with children with special needs in general, or even just students or anyone in general who needs some kind of help, and being there to kind of walk them through that process and then seeing them succeed.
Yes.
It's so rewarding.
What has been the biggest challenge in terms of the pursuit of that?
So I'm
By the way,
yes.
You were working.
I am working
at the same time
as going to school.
While you were going to school. Yes. So let me give you your flowers.
Thank you.
It's
hard.
It's hard, but
definitely hard.
What are the challenges in terms of the pursuit of that?
The challenges.
Career?
So, as in working with kids directly, or just kind of still striving to get to that path of
the general path.
Oh man.
Biggest
I think
challenge.
right now because of COVID, right? So for my field, I have to earn a certain amount of hours, to even sit for my board exam. And with COVID, so I decided to start coursework mid-COVID. So I just literally started September of last year. Prior to that, being able to get hours of supervision was a lot easier. But then with COVID, with supervisors working from home or not being able to take in supervisees, it was difficult.
So it's hard to take in, do the hours.
It's hard to get the hours right now. And so that's my struggle. And also just kind of, so basically I'm still kind of entry level just because I'm only a behavior analyst, behavior therapist. And so there's tiers above me. So there's other senior therapists. The senior therapists have and then above that would be an associate clinician. There's the clinicians, senior clinicians. So I'm the bottom, right? So priority kind of goes to the other tiers,
right.
In terms of hours wise. So with COVID, it's as if like I have to go pursue and find hours myself versus how it was before, where it's like, hey, this is available. Do you want this? Like, hey, I'm doing this. Because you could just easily go into the office. You could easily just be able to run certain things, but it's not as easy anymore. So that's my current struggle with it. In terms of, I guess, challenges of working in the field in general. So I work one-on-one with clients. Just general information about working with children with autism. Their behaviors can be it could go from 0 to 100 basically. You know, it's a spectrum, and you can definitely go through session and have a client who has different behaviors, and especially it's very hard for a therapist to provide services with a client who also has aggressive behavior.
Right.
And one of the biggest challenges for me was being aggressed by a client who would bite or hit or, you know, other behaviors, you know, but that's the thing, it comes with the job.
It's their form of expression at the same time.
And sometimes they just aren't able to communicate their needs. Like some children are nonverbal.
Right.
Some children don't have that capacity yet to explain, you know,
or express
what the function of their behavior is, you know? And so it does require a lot of patience.
You have patience?
I do, surprisingly. I really do. Because, you know, like, what are you going to do? It's like, if a client hits you, am I going to hit you back? Absolutely not.
For sure.
Absolutely not. It's more like, how we kind of think about it is, okay, how will you respond to it versus react to it? So respond and react is two completely different things.
Okay.
So, you know,
we're getting into psychology right now. Let's go.
So like, you know, if my client hits me, okay, my instant thing's like, oh, what do they need? So I want them to ask me, you know? I'm like, okay, like, oh, like, do you need something? Right? I'm not going to enforce the behavior by like, you know, immediately giving something that I know they probably want, you know? So let's say like they're hitting me because they want the phone.
Okay.
I'm not going to immediately give the phone.
Right.
Like, you know.
I want my iPad.
Or your iPad, yes. Do you?
I want my iPad.
Okay, you can ask me. You can ask me nicely.
Yeah.
You
so
know,
then,
So like, I want to reinforce appropriate behavior versus inappropriate behavior. So yeah, so that's generally the field. So yeah, challenges kind of with that. But then also there's challenges of, oh man, you know, I've been working with this client for, you know, a certain amount of time, and you know, he could be a slow learner.
They have their own pace?
Every kid has their own pace, and every kid, you know, their learning ability is different. Every kid is different.
For sure.
And that's what everyone has to understand, is that, hey, like, you could have a client who is high functioning and is getting every single program, mastering every program, but then you're also going to have other clients who may not be at that same level, and it's okay. You know, so you have to have that patience. Like, okay, they're not understanding this. Okay, let's try it again. Let's run it again. If like in a certain amount of time they're not meeting that criteria, okay, let's go back, reevaluate. Why aren't they? You know, let's see, why aren't they succeeding yet? Okay, so can we alter this program in order for us to help them? Kind of like alter it to what we know of them, so we can help them succeed, also meeting with ABA, but also them at the same time, you know. So.
Is there anything that you've learned in that field in terms of behavioral therapy and applied it to like your personal life? Absolutely. Is there something that you do with your partner?
Yes. Well, this is kind of backstory. My partner and I, we both work in the field.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that, so with behavior, just generally in behavior, you know, I am not gonna respond to a behavior that I don't like.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, for sure.
So it doesn't even have to be a significant other. It could just be a
Generally,
person, a friend. If, you know, they're acting inappropriately, you know, I'll respond differently. You know,
okay.
That's the thing. Like I learned how to respond versus react.
How about in terms of like self-discipline?
Self-discipline.
Yeah, I think you probably heard me sharing about my addiction to chips.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend in terms of behavioral therapy?
Behavior. Oh my God. So okay, I mean, okay, in behaviors of that, I will. Okay, I guess. Well, okay, with chips, like, do you want to no longer have that addiction to it? And do you want to substitute it with something more appropriate, like a more healthier?
I don't want to substitute.
You don't want to substitute?
I want to consume in a healthy way.
Okay, and so you can definitely. Sorry, I'm like thinking of like, oh, what program would I have for you? I would just kind of do like, give yourself a ratio of it. It's like, like, hey, like, I can have this amount of chips, so I'm still getting what I want, but just decrease the amount that you're giving yourself.
Do I punish myself for not meeting my...
You can if you want to. There is such thing as punishment. Okay. So it's like, it kind of goes in terms of being on a diet. It's like, okay, like just trying to change the way you eat. If you want, like, okay, or even exercise. Like, if I do 50 jumping jacks, I can, reward myself with
the
5.
punishment and reward.
I could reward myself with like 5 pieces of potato chips or something.
Okay, 5 pieces. That's nothing. That's one.
That's like,
I'm playing.
But like if you're still getting what you want essentially, but you're just lessening the amount. I guess if you wanted to do it that way. I'm still learning the field. Do not quote me. So any BCBAs out there, don't come after me.
Yeah, I think with the episode with Alexa, we're talking about the chip, which I would consume. But after that, I actually got a bag of chips, and I was able to actually just eat a quarter of it. Okay. Roll it up and put it on the side, and and I waited an hour to go. And
Hey,
but then in the practice, in just the delay, I was within an hour. I ate some more, but then I got to halfway, and I was like, okay, that's one way, and how you extend. So you don't have to do it right here, right now. Yeah. It's a process of building.
That's called intervals.
There you go. There you go. the language.
Oh, you're doing an interval schedule. Okay.
There you go. So you were mentioning you got into, what did you say? You got into the work?
So I work in ABA, but before I wanted to work with victims of sexual assault.
Victims of sexual assault. Why? Why did you get into that?
So personal reasons.
Okay.
So I am a survivor of sexual assault. So during the time in my undergrad, that was also during the time of sexual assault on college campuses, how not that it doesn't go unnoticed, but there's no justice at all, period. And also during the time of my undergrad, that was also during the time of the Stanford swimmer incident, the rape that happened on Stanford. For those of you who don't know, basically, not too far, Palo Alto is not too far from here, but there was a rape occurred on a college campus, and it went into a whole, I think it was like a national ordeal, because ultimately he was found guilty, but he was only sentenced 6 months, but served 3. So there was, at that moment, no justice at all.
For sure. But
later, what was so great about the anger that came out of the ultimate decision was that it became now like a national thing, where I believe they said that if someone is found guilty of rape, they have to serve a minimum of at least 3 years. So that's the bright light that came out of that situation. But in relation to me, so being a survivor of sexual assault, and also sexual assault is defined as any conduct or any behavior that is not explicitly consented by the recipient. So with that, I experienced my first sexual assault when I was only 8 years old. And also, just so others know too, 80% of victims know who their assailant is, and the other 20 is complete strangers. So a lot of times it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it can be someone who you think or thought you could trust. And the person who assaulted me was a family member. And being 8 years old, I didn't know how to react. I didn't understand exactly what was happening to me, but all I knew is that I didn't like it. And I froze, and I just felt so paralyzed. And at that time, what do I say? Like, who do I tell? And for me, being so young, I didn't understand what happened to me. So I stayed quiet. I just didn't say anything. And then years had just passed where after that assault, I made it a point to stay away from him and to, if any time we were at like a family gathering, if I were ever to need to do something, I always made sure someone was with me. So I'll ask a cousin or someone like, hey, can you go to the bathroom with me? Or, hey, do you want to go get this and this with me inside? And even though I kept my distance, you know when someone has eyes on you, no matter how far away they are in the room. And I could even, I'm focused on whatever's in front of me, but I could just feel eyes, and I'll make eye contact, and there's times where he'd wink at me and just stare at me, and there's even times where he's made inappropriate comments to my appearance. There was one time he said, "You look sexy today." Like, why would you ever tell a child that how they look is sexy? It's sexualized, so you're sexualizing me. So I endured that for years. And it wasn't until I was turning 18, so I was planning my cotillion. And my mom and I and my party planner, we were planning, who's going to be your 18 roses, 18 candles? And my mom had a very strong opinion that he should be one of my roses. I said, absolutely not. And I was like, no. And then my mom was like, why? And then I just came out with it. And I said, because he did this to me. And my mom was like, it took a while for her to process it. She's like, what? I said, yeah. She's like, when? And then I had to go back into that timeline and explain it to her. And I think my mom, she couldn't really understand what it was, and what he did. So as time went on, still enduring those awkward moments and those moments of anxiety of me knowing that I was going to be in the same place as him, it was always, I don't know, I felt like I always had to kind of mentally prepare myself during that travel from where I was coming to where I knew where he was going to be. And I just know, okay, I cannot wear this. I cannot do this. I cannot do this when I'm around him, And it wasn't until maybe 2015 or 2014 where another incident had happened to another family member. And I remember, those who knew about the incident were saying well, how are we going to get people to believe that he did this? And ultimately, I came out with my truth, and only to a small circle of family. You were there. And it was so hard to just talk about the details of what happened to me, but at the same time, in some ways it was freeing, because slowly I felt like I'm able to talk about it and also kind of slowly start to be okay with talking about it. And the difference with that was I was able to share it with cousins who can understand how wrong that act was. So when it was time for me to tell the elders, completely different reaction. It was what? Are you sure he did that? Did he really do that? And then I had a very brief moment of support from elders, and that immediately went away. And then I remember hearing families say, it happened a long time ago. Just forgive him. Just forget about it. Or they would say, it's okay, God's watching. So where's my justice? Because when I came out to my family, not only did I share my story, but that also gave the strength of 3 other female family members to come out and say, he did this to me too. So you have 4 young women telling the family, hey, this person did this to us at a very young age. Who's the person in the wrong? But as soon as, because I felt like I finally had found my voice, and I finally felt that I had the courage to speak the truth about it, but I felt like my family saw me as the bad person, and that I was seeking some kind of vengeance or revenge on him. And, that's the hard thing about telling people or women in a family who were raised to be more resilient, versus our generations where we're not afraid to speak the truth, where we're not afraid to use our voice. So after that whole incident, there are times where after going to a family gathering, and then as soon as I arrived, everyone's like, oh, Ellen's here. It's like, so you are tiptoeing around me as if I'm the bad person, but the person who did the bad thing is here, and you guys are like not even batting an eye. And it was like it 100% caused such a huge separation in our family, because it did affect my relationship with the person who he was married to, my aunt. It caused somewhat of a separation between me and my cousin. But it helped me realize that, hey, you know who's in your corner. You know who's here to support you, and you know who will always 100% have your back. So those are the only people who I need in my life, So with that, kind of going back full circle, so when I was in my undergrad and how everything was kind of like happening at the same time, I just kind of had that passion to want to work with victims of sexual assault, especially those in the Asian American community, because one, from what I learned anyway, when I was still doing my undergrad, I learned that a lot of times victims of sexual assault who were within the Asian American community, they do not tell or do not report that they were assaulted. And the reason being is because there's that stigma, there's the shame, and there's the shame of shaming your family name. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, because where's the justice in it? I believe in numbers, and I believe, yes, the more women who can share their story, are willing to share their stories, slowly but surely they can find some kind of justice in it, but it's hard. So for me, if by me sharing my story and being very transparent and vulnerable to tell people about it, if that gives you the courage to finally use your voice and to tell people what had happened to you, then I applaud you. And I applaud you for finding that courage. And I applaud you for finding that strength, because it's not easy. It's not easy. And what's harder is potentially going through victim blame. What were you wearing? Were you drinking? All of that. Why? Just because, just generally, women should be able to feel safe and be able to do things freely without the fear of being assaulted, without the fear of someone following them, without the fear that they're going to get raped or the fear of getting kidnapped, the fear of anything, and also men are not entitled to our bodies. They're not. And when we say no, do they listen? No. And I don't mean to generalize men. I don't mean to. I'm just speaking freely about it. But it's a conversation that has been consistently happening, but there's still very little action. And those who need to be held responsible are not being held responsible. Yeah.
I think, thank you, first and foremost, thank you for sharing your personal story and being vulnerable, especially, being in a public view. And I appreciate your courage and being able to share. And so with that, one thing is that this condition is very prevalent in our Filipino community.
Yeah.
And so, again, like, if there are people out there that have experienced these conditions, it's a must that we find support not just within the family, but also outside of the family, and to be able to build a community and tribe that can empower you and encourage you to take action against the perpetrator. And I think it's not easy.
No.
It's very hard, and there will be family separations in essence, because our family has this feudal system that plays out in terms of sweeping things under the rug.
Yes.
Just for the sake of maintaining relationships.
Yeah, and like people or like family members need to also know, like, I don't like the term like that's your mom, that's your auntie, that's your uncle. You should, just forgive them, or like, just because we're blood, if I could be very frank, like, if just because we're blood doesn't mean shit.
Yeah. If you do harm to anyone, no matter what your relationship is, you should be accountable.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And you should, be dealt with in a sense.
Yes.
So again, this is prevalent in our community. Again, if folks are experiencing, are there any resources that you can share?
I do know one for sure off the top of my head is the YWCA, that's Silicon Valley, and they actually did aid in the assault that happened with the Stanford swimmer. There's a few other ones too. If you're in the Bay Area, let me see.
And if folks are looking for support, also like really reach out to the community organizations in your locality.
Yes.
There are different Filipino organizations. There's Gabriela that are fighting for women's rights. And there's Anak Bayan, is a youth organization that can support, and they're across the U.S. And if folks can want to reach out to me, feel free to reach out, and I can plug folks in terms of finding support and community.
Yes. So some resources for sexual assault. There's Bay Area Women Against Rape. There's also Sexual Assault Crisis Line, Victim Witness Program, National Sexual Assault Hotline as well. If you can, maybe you could link it down below in the bio.
Sure.
Also, too, if you can't find, or if you don't feel comfortable talking to a professional or anyone about it, I would say something that helped me was finding those people, or finding someone who you feel absolutely safe sharing that with, and just talking about it. Because talking about it, it could be very traumatic to share, but also it could help in the process of healing at the same time. At least that's what helped for me. So whoever you choose to share your story with, I just hope that you find that person who will listen and will also be there for you. Because there have been times where people who have shared their stories with me, and they share their stories with where they have shared their stories with others, and the other people didn't receive it well, I guess. They didn't understand it. Like, they're like, oh, so that happened to you, but like, in terms of almost doubting that it happened. And that's something that, like, overall, you know, the reason why some people don't come out with the truth of being assaulted is because they don't think people will believe them.
And I think it reflects also in the justice system that's playing out.
Yes.
So it's a systemic issue. And statistically, 1 out of 4 women will face violence. You know, so that's the world.
Yeah.
And so what are we doing in regards to having that number and understanding that number, that 1 out of 4 women in our life will face violence?
Yeah.
In the many forms that it comes. And so it's a must that we not just protect women, but we must educate men, young men, in regards to boundaries and being able to
and
understand.
Respecting that boundary.
Yes. So yes, I'll definitely link all the different organizations and the different resources in regards to that condition, in terms of people want to reach out, want to have a conversation around it. And again, I'm always available. Feel free to reach out to me, all the different social media. I want to be able to connect and redirect folks to the right person, the right organization, and the right support.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So, but thank you for sharing that. It's, yeah, I mean, I get agitated with it, you know, because I have a daughter.
Of course, yes.
You know, and in terms of women, they don't have to be our family. We don't have to have relationship with the women to protect them.
No,
it's understanding that the struggle of women. It's like, to be able to understand it, you have to look at the whole condition, that what's happening in the world, like.
And you know, why do us women have to go to like a certain amount of extents to feel safe? Why do we have to have, you know, our keys in between our hands and in between our fingers to like walk to our car? Why do we have to always feel like if we're out, we have to cover our drink with our hands to prevent us from potentially getting drugged? Why are we the ones who have to go through those extents when the people who are acting on that are the men who are doing it to us? So again, don't victim blame. Instead, teach and educate men and boys to know that, hey, when a woman says no, it's a no. Like, and I don't understand sometimes, like, how can men do that when, like, you have a mother, you might have a sister, you might have another female in your family, a female in general whom you really care about. So if you wouldn't want that to happen to them, why are you doing that to others?
So definitely in terms of like the systemic issue, it's really patriarchal. And I do want to plug you into folks, and in terms of women organizing.
Yes.
And to there's Gabriela has a women orientation, and they talk about like what is happening in regards to Philippines and in relation to the Filipino women, in relation to the general like society, and how they are oppressed and abused in a sense, but women can take power and make the change that's needed to change the society, so they don't have to feel all these things. And so I want to plug you into the folks. And if other women are interested in Gabriela, I think if you checked out, I'll post my last interview with Gabriela's from Santa Cruz, and you can check that out also. So again, any last words? Actually, do you have any question for me?
For you.
Before we end? And then, like,
I didn't think about any.
Okay. Any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom.
To share with the audience?
Oh. I guess in general, like for women in general, know your worth. Know where you're not appreciated, and know your boundaries. And when you know it, stick to them, because you yourself are the only one who can really hold yourself accountable. And so with that, you know, I don't know, even just in general too, women should also empower women, and women should also stick by women. Like, you kind of caught me off guard there. I didn't have a closing.
I do want to extend to, again, build community outside of the family.
Yes,
sometimes our own community is our family.
Yes.
And I think we have to extend outside of the family in regards to the general community, and find the support system outside of those. And so, because there are definitely contradictions within the family systems.
Yes. And, it's like what they say, you don't have to be blood to be family.
For sure. So, did you find a question for me?
I did not.
Okay. Off the top, what's your question? What would you ask me?
What would I ask you? Okay. How are your plants doing?
I got plants from her, and she was actually checking up on the plants.
Yeah.
What happened to this one? What happened But they're good. I can definitely be better in regards to the caring and the nurturing part.
Yeah.
And but definitely, I do have my own little plant collection, and I'm building. And so, yeah, I'm definitely need to learn more. I think I haven't got to dig deep in terms of the learning aspect.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, this is what I do. But that the specificity of like how to take care of a specific plant, that's something that I need to go into.
For sure.
So yeah.
Also, I just want to say thank you for having me on here and for inviting me here and giving me a platform to just be able to speak my truth and to be able to share my stories, to everyone. And I'm just very grateful for you. I've always been very grateful for you. So.
And thank you for your motherfucking courage.
Thank you.
So that's blah blah. Again, thank you. If y'all watching, please like, subscribe. We'll put all the links in regards to women's resources and all the organizations. And we are out.